Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2, coming at you today with a bit more of a guide and informational based video focusing on endgame content. Now look, there is never a day that passes where I don't get asked directly or I see a thread posted on Twitter or Reddit of newer players to the game asking, hey, I just hit level 40, what do I do now? Obviously there are a lot of systems and features to take in, those are a hurdle themselves, but beyond that, as soon as you hit the endgame, you've got an array of different modes and content unlocking, new difficulty tiers. It's absolutely overwhelming, and it leads to the question of how do I pick what to play, or even more importantly, what content is actually worth investing my time into? And that is the question that I aim to answer in this video. I'm going to be giving you my top 3 list as well as a few honorable mention picks for endgame content and modes in the Division 2 that I think are most worth your time as a new or returning player. The most bang for your buck, if you will. In terms of efficiency, reward, challenge level, all of it has been taken in mind for this ranking, so hopefully that sounds useful to some of you out there. And let's get right to it. As we go through this list, if it ends up helping you out and you want to see more Division 2 content like it in the future, then I would be endlessly grateful of you clicking that subscribe button if you haven't already. As it turns out, 70% of y'all that watch these videos are not subscribed. So if you're at all inclined to join in, we would love to have you. But without further ado, let's jump on into the ranking. Alright, at number 3, we have got the Summit game mode. Now, the Summit is interesting. It is not the flashiest mode out there, and it's not necessarily the most time efficient or reward lucrative content in the game. However, the reason I think it has value, and the reason that I put it on this list, is how customizable it is, and because of how it's able to adequately challenge and fulfill the needs of the widest number of players. The Summit is a 1 to 4 player PvE game mode. It will scale its difficulty depending on how many people you have in your group, and the premise is very simple. You're climbing a skyscraper from floors 1 to 100, clearing out enemies and completing various objectives as you go. You get a checkpoint every 3 floors as well as every 10th floor that you hit, so there's very little time commitment needed. You can tackle the mode in as many short bursts or for however few long sessions as you like. But as stated, one of the big reasons that I put Summit on this list is because of how much you're able to tune the experience you'll have in there. Let me show you what I mean. Firstly, once you reach the end game, you'll find the Summit in the top right corner of your world map from DC, up above DZ East. You hover over that and hold the labeled button to fast travel. Once here, you'll be in the lobby for the skyscraper. You've got a stash as well as some gear benches to prep whatever build you want to use, but upon approaching the elevator is where you get to set up your run. Summit allows you to run it at any of the 5 endgame difficulty tiers that the game has to offer, from normal all the way up to legendary. But beyond just that, it also lets you apply any number of the game's various directives. Directives are basically the Division 2's modifiers. They are optional added mechanics and difficulty layers that you can apply to your gameplay, typically in return for greater XP and rewards. And so, in combination, by Summit allowing you full control over your overall difficulty, directive application if you choose any, and NPC scaling for 1 to 4 players, it is a highly customizable mode that services both the freshest of new players and the most hardcore of vets. I'm sure a big question that many of you are asking, though, is what do I get in return? Why is it worth my time? Firstly, Summit is one of only 2 places within the Division 2 that allows you to select your own targeted loot. You can access this from within the mode by opening up your map and pressing the assigned button at the bottom to open the selector, and you then have access to any of these loot categories. You can swap as often as you like and use each one for as long as you like. There's no limitations or restrictions. And while targeted loot itself across the game is super vital in fast tracking your farming and build making in the endgame, being able to swap between and choose your own at will within a mode like the Summit is even better. One other thing to be aware of as far as rewards go, also from the map you can tap to the left to look at and select your Summit challenges. They're broken down into 2 categories and basically just serve as challenges you can complete as you climb from floors 1 to 100. For each one you clear, you get a variety of rewards that you can see on the right hand side, ranging from XP to caches and more for however many you're able to complete within a single ascent. Just keep in mind that you have to go back and manually select these, including when one is completed. The game will not autofill the next one in. And lastly, on top of everything we just went over, Summit is filled with loot crates to open, hidden rooms with material caches, etc. So keep an eye out for doors with locks to be shot off or other little nooks and crannies. And watch for a yellow beamed key that will be hiding somewhere on every 3-floor set that you traverse. Picking that up will be how you unlock the loot chest that awaits at the end of every 3rd floor. At number 2 on the list, we have control points. Control points have always been a staple in the Division 2 endgame farming and content, but the reason I find them to still be relevant today and why I put them this high on the list is both because of their accessibility, they're very easy to take on, and their more unique rewards. Doing these can really help you build out your arsenal and unlocks if you're a newer player. So, first things first, control points are these activities that you'll find within the open world. Now, to get the maximum benefit out of these, it is recommended that you run these on either Tier 3 or Tier 4 difficulty, which is the equivalent to challenging and heroic respectively, which may sound daunting at first, however, given the fact that you get to call in friendly NPCs to assist your assault, and since you can take these on at however far a distance and as slowly as you like, I've got faith that you can do it. But of course, feel free to start out at Tier 1 or 2 just to get a feel for them. There are 2 ways that you can progress a control point from Tiers 1 to 4. The most direct, control points will scale their difficulty to match your overall world difficulty. The way that you change that is by going into your map, clicking on global settings at the bottom, and changing this accordingly. Setting your world to normal will make all control points Tier 1, hard Tier 2, challenging Tier 3, and heroic Tier 4. That's the easiest and fastest way to do it, but let's say you want to do Tier 3 control points, but you don't want the rest of the world to be at challenging difficulty. Your alternative is to look at any specific control point that you may want to do, and you should see red lines running from it to other nearby activities. For each one of those connected activities that you complete, the control points tier will increase by 1. Alright, now you know how they work, but why the effort? Well, beyond providing a solid amount of loot overall from the 2 bosses per run and the loot chest at the end, as well as being able to use the daily targeted loot rotation to choose which zones and points might offer the more relevant rewards towards whatever you want, control points have 2 specific and unique incentives. For one, the final loot chests from Tier 3 and 4 control points have a 10% chance to drop you an exotic component, which is essentially the rarest and most desirable endgame material, as they're used for re-rolling exotic items and upgrading your gear via the game's more grindy endgame progression systems. In addition, every Tier 3 and 4 control point that you clear will award you a blueprint. These include mods, gear, and more. So that is a super useful outlet to begin building out your blueprint library and increasing your crafting viability for future builds. Across the board, control points are just solid, always have been, likely always will be. Okay, and then before we hit number 1, I wanted to throw 2 honorable mentions in here. Reason being, I think that both of these 2 pieces of content I'm about to shout out are super worth your time and super rewarding. However, they're not going to be as accessible to everyone like the rest of the stuff on this list is. So if you have the group for it, or you meet the right conditions to play this content, then 100% go for it, and just in case that applies to anyone watching, I wanted to include it here. Honorable mention number 1, conflict. Now, the more restricted accessibility here should be pretty self-explanatory. It's PvP. Some people are perfectly happy and comfortable playing it, for others it's the bane of their existence. If you happen to fall into that former group, then you're in luck, because after the mini revamp that the mode got earlier this year, conflict is easily one of the most rewarding spots in the Division 2. For playing just one match, which can take anywhere from 4 to 10 minutes, earning a very average score, you don't even have to top the scoreboard, you'll earn something in the ballpark of 2 full shade levels of XP, and anywhere from 1 to 3 conflict caches, which each grant you 2 items of legendary quality, meaning super high stat rolls. And an added bonus, these caches have one of, if not the highest chances for a bonus exotic item of any other cache in the game. So if you enjoy PvP, or you're just curious about it and are willing to give it a shot, can't recommend Conflict enough. You queue into it by going into your map, tabbing over and clicking here. I'll leave some guides and conflict resources in the description of this video if you're curious. Alright, and then honorable mention number 2, the Paradise Lost Incursion. Again, reason that this isn't on the numbered list itself, incursions are tough content. They're made for groups of 4, and while they can be completed with purely no communication matchmaking, I've done this and demonstrated it in a video, it's no question far easier if you have 3 other friends to group up with and can talk and strategize as you go. But however you get there, if you're willing to take on the challenge, Paradise Lost is quite rewarding. You can get your runs down to a smooth 20 to 30 minutes even at a casual pace, and ideally doing this once a week is recommended, because while each boss drops their own high quality loot, there's a final chest that can be opened once per week. It contains a guaranteed exotic, but then beyond that you also have a 10% chance from it to get the Ouroboros exotic SMG, which many consider to be the best gun in the game. So if you've got what it takes, I highly recommend. You can find Paradise Lost in the upper left corner of the DC map up by DZ West if you're interested, and like the conflict links, I will leave a link to a full guide on the incursion in the description below. Alright, and then last but certainly not least, we get to my number one recommendation for the best endgame content to play in the Division 2. Drumroll please. It's Countdown. I'm guessing many of you have heard this name already, and it's because it is essentially universally accepted that this is the fastest and best way to farm in the endgame. Here's the gist. Countdown is a match-made mode intended for 8 players in which you partake in quick 15-minute runs with the goal of stopping the meltdown of a nuclear power plant. The reason why Countdown is just too worth it to avoid is because in that 15 minutes, the game throws more loot at you than any other 15-minute segment of gameplay anywhere else in the Division 2. You've got a constant flow of bosses, loot chests, guaranteed named item drops. It's simply too good. To start up Countdown, you can navigate to its icon on the map right next to the previously covered summit in the upper right corner of the DC map. You'll see the options to either start your own group if you've got friends to invite, or you can just go straight to matchmaking. Now I know some people prefer purely solo play, they don't enjoy group content. If you really can't stand playing with a group, then you can run Countdown on normal or hard difficulties. And although it's scaled for 8 players, the lower inherent difficulty makes it not too tough of a solo challenge, but do keep in mind that this will result in lower quality loot drops. However, I assure you that no communication nor real coordination is needed with other random players in the mode. Everyone's played this a million times, they know what to do, and the objectives themselves are quite simple and clear. So, the recommended and optimal random matchmaking difficulty is challenging. That ensures a solid balance between loot quality and gameplay difficulty. It's the most populated difficulty for matchmaking to my knowledge, and given this mode's fame, you should have no trouble finding groups at almost any time of day. One important thing to keep in mind as you head in is that, like Summit, Countdown allows you to select your own targeted loot, another reason for why it's so worthwhile. So once you get in the mode, you can open your map and change it from there. Just keep in mind that the selector is shared between Summit and Countdown, so selections made will apply to the other mode, so you may need to go in and change it if you want something different. Other than that, just follow your group. Chances are the majority know exactly what to do. There are countermeasures to be disabled, basically buffs that you can activate for that run. Hunters stalk the map, be sure to grab the dog tags that they drop. In the different sectors of the map, lots of loot will be dropping. It's recommended that you go in with at least 40 to 50 free slots in your bag so that you can pick everything up. And assuming you can complete the challenges within the 15-minute timer, be aware that that's when the extraction portion of the mode begins. From there, you have 4 minutes to run to the extraction zone, clear out the big reinforcement waves awaiting you, and call in the chopper. This portion of the mode specifically is permadeath. You will be booted from the mode if you die, so play cautiously. You won't lose the loot that you've collected, but not extracting via the chopper will significantly cut the amount of requisition tokens that you earn, more on those in a moment. Also note that players will often leave the timer for the final few seconds before calling the flare in order to maximize enemy spawn and loot earned, so just follow your group leader's charge when it comes to that. Last thing to know, once you're out of the mode and back at the White House, this station in the shared space is the Countdown vendor, where you can spend those tokens on a weekly rotation of named items or a fixed cash selection, earning you guessed it, even more great loot. Just remember to clear your bag and sort your newly acquired items before you jump back in for another run. Alright everybody, and that is going to do it for your rundown of my top 3 most recommended pieces of endgame content in the Division 2. I sincerely hope that this helped out for those of you who are looking for some guidance, or at the very least that it was entertaining and informative. If you are a newer or returning player and you have any lingering questions, then please leave them below. I'll be happy to try and clear anything up. And if by chance you are a veteran or more long-time player who is listening, then feel free to leave your own perspective and thoughts on the matter below as well. My list isn't the right list, it's just my take on things. So if you've got reasons for why you think other content is more worthwhile or whatever, let's make this a constructive discussion. That's going to do it for me on this one, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.